What if the real secret to a meaningful life isn't about everything you gain, but about what you're willing to let go of? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into today. We're exploring this powerful idea through a series of ancient parables, all centered around one single metaphor: the empty vessel. This quote, wow, it just gets right to the heart of it all. It perfectly sets up the core conflict we're going to be exploring: the huge difference between a vessel that's totally full of its own pride and one that's empty, open, and actually ready for something truly life-giving. So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to kick things off with a foundational parable about two pots. Then we'll see how that same idea applies to society and nobility. From there, we'll explore a really radical version of self-emptying with Zarathustra, see how it plays out in friendship, and finally, we'll tie it all together to figure out where true virtue really comes from. All right, let's get right into our first story. This simple parable about two different potters, well, it's the anchor for everything else we're going to talk about. It just sets the stage perfectly. Okay, so first, meet the first potter. He makes this absolutely stunning pot, right? A total masterpiece. But instead of actually using it, he fills it with some super expensive oil and sticks it way up on a high shelf for everyone to admire. You see, this isn't about being useful. No, it's about building a monument to his own so-called sacrifice. And he just boasts about it. He talks about his renunciation, claiming his pot is overflowing with virtue just because he's not using it. But what's so fascinating is that this whole sacrifice is just a show. It's a performance, And it's completely rooted in vanity and this deep need to feel superior to everyone else. And this slide just lays it out so clearly. On one side, you've got the proud potter. He's driven by vanity, he's hoarding this useless oil, and it all just leads to stagnation and pride. But on the other side, you've got the humble potter, who's motivated by a real purpose. He actively empties his simple pots so they can be filled with rainwater, and his simple act of giving creates a wellspring for his entire community. So the huge point the storyteller here, the Nazarene, is making is this: real sacrifice isn't about loudly denying yourself things just to prove how virtuous you are. No, it's a quiet, humble act. It's about emptying out your own pride to make space for something so much greater to flow through you. Okay, let's keep building on this. This whole concept of the empty vessel, it doesn't just apply to one person. We can actually see the exact same principle at work in the values of entire societies, which is perfectly illustrated in this next parable of two cities. So now we're introduced to two cities. The first one bases its entire worth on ancestry, on the glories of the past. The other city believes you can just buy nobility with enough wealth, but the point of the parable is that, in the end, both are completely barren. Now, what's so cool about this slide is the imagery is just so vivid. The high city is like a withered vine, totally dry and barren because it's just clinging to what it used to be. The low city, well, it's that same barren vine, but it's been covered in mud and jewels to hide the emptiness. You see, they're both full, but they're full of all the wrong things. One with pride in the past, the other with a flashy, materialistic pride. So what's the answer then? True nobility? Well, it can't be inherited, and you definitely can't buy it. It's not something you have on the outside. The parable tells us it has to be cultivated internally, grown just like a seed. It comes from tending to your own soul, not from clinging to the past or decorating your exterior. All right, now brace yourselves, because we're about to pivot to a far more radical, and honestly a much more challenging version of this whole emptying idea. This comes from the philosopher Zarathustra. And this isn't about making space for rainwater. This is about becoming a projectile for the entire future of humanity. Okay, first, the setup. In Zarathustra's metaphor, humanity is this great bow. But over time, it's become weak. The string is all slack. Because for centuries, it's been aimed at the wrong targets. Things like basic comfort or promises of a reward in some afterlife. Its true potential has just been sitting there, totally neglected. Then you have the archer. And the archer is the philosopher, Zarathustra himself. He's the one who strains against all those old traditions and values. He's the one who pulls back the string of the human bow, not to shoot at the heavens, but to aim humanity toward a new, profound meaning, right here on Earth. And this right here is the most crucial part. You are not the bow, and you are not the archer. The goal is to become the arrow. And what that means is embodying a total sacrifice of your current self for the sake of what humanity could one day be. You literally become a living bridge to the future. So what does it actually mean to be the arrow? Well, it's this process he calls a downgoing, a profound descent. First, you have to sacrifice your comfortable self, shed all those old beliefs. Second, you have to leave the safety of the herd, of tradition. Third, you forge your own path, soaring into the unknown. And finally, your whole purpose is to become a seed for a new future, to create a new value for the earth, even if that very act of creation is your end. It is the ultimate emptying of the self. Okay, wow. From that super intense idea of self-sacrifice, let's bring it a little closer to home and see how this theme applies to our relationships. Zarathustra suggests that true, powerful connection also requires a kind of emptiness, but not an emptying of purpose. No, this is about emptying yourself of neediness. He calls his ideal star friendship. And check this out, it's not about two halves making a whole. It's a bond between two complete, self-sufficient individuals, two suns. They don't orbit each other out of need, they respect each other's individual paths, and they respect the sacred space between them. And this comparison just nails the difference, right? On the one hand, you have herd companionship, which is based on need, on pity, on clinging to other people to escape being lonely. But star friendship is founded on strength. The goal isn't to find comfort in someone else, but to become a radiant sun yourself, and to respect the journey of other suns you meet, even if your paths have to go in different directions. This is such a powerful and totally counterintuitive idea. To reach the absolute highest form of friendship, Zarathustra says you have to be willing to let go, to even become strangers again. It's that distance, that deep respect for each other's solitude, that actually makes the connection sacred and holy, not constant closeness. So let's bring all these threads together. We've seen this theme of emptying play out through the parables of the Nazarene and the philosophy of Zarathustra. And really, they're both pointing toward the same fundamental truth about where real value comes from. When you step back and look at it, the takeaway is crystal clear across all these stories. The proud potter, full of his own vanity, was useless. The two cities, full of false nobility, were barren. To become the arrow, you have to completely empty yourself for a higher purpose. And to form a true friendship, you have to empty yourself of neediness. In every single case, renouncing the ego makes space for something infinitely greater. And that brings us right to the final question, the one that these parables really leave for us to answer for ourselves. When you look at your own life, your own values, your own relationships, what vanity, what pride, what neediness do you need to empty out in order to make room to be truly filled?